Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. I have another fantastic show planned, but as we all know, no plan survives first contact. So, um,
Well, you better get your subscribe up right away
I
then.
was gonna say, what's up?
So
How's
you're
it going?
already under contact. You're already
I
flailing
don't even
around
know what's
out there.
happening anymore.
I know.
Hey, look at that! You can, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and join us every day here on The Collective as we learn and build and grow. And we can shut her down right there. Boom, 35 seconds per show.
Done.
Call it a day.
Thanks for joining, Seb. See you next Monday.
Well, I figured since we talked to him on Saturday already, we were like, okay, we've done an
Yeah,
hour.
I feel like I've had my fill. Okay, can we cut it?
You filled your quota.
That's right. Once a week. That's my max.
Check. Good to go. Yeah. So any thoughts? Anything on the top of your head, Sean? You got Satch in the house?
Oh yeah, got a house guest. Satch drove up from Vancouver about 7 hours to come hang out in Rossland. He leaves Tuesday morning. He came out here to have a coffee / etc. And so it's been fun. It's been good hanging out, talking about a few things, solving all the world's problems as we never do. But we are still working on the dolphin language. We are trying to interpret that dolphin language.
Excellent. That's good use of your time.
Good use of our time.
100%. Yeah. Seb, how's it going with you? What are you up to?
Yeah, man, not much. Just negotiating in the terms in school and a bunch of different projects on the go, and just finished my workout and walked in here nice and quick right before the call out time.
Right before
Speaking
the call.
of
You actually showed up early.
Let me segue directly into your mental health walk from yesterday. I saw the photo, and it looked like you're on a large river rock bank, looking out into some water, etc. So how'd the walk go?
It went really well. Yesterday was at Golden Ears, lower trail, lower something trail. Anyways, a great trail. Lots of powerful water movements. A lot of flowing river and waterfalls and all that good stuff. It's a really powerful spot that has also a bit of a clearing where we did a mindfulness stop. It has a clearing, and the water is just super clear, and the bottom is rock, and the dogs can go in there, and you can go in there if you want to, refresh in the summer if it's warm or whatever the case may be. So one of the problems that we have here, and I don't know if you guys are encountering the same thing, is that our parks are actually asking for reservations for the summer, right? So Golden Ears Park, Bunsen Lake, and a bunch of other amazing spots that we love to go and take the mental health walk to are actually, you need to reserve in the summer, but more importantly, people do reserve and they don't show up. So they're taking spots, and there's limited spots, as you might imagine. And they're reserving every day so that they can have the option of going if they want to. A lot of the times they're not going. And so now we end up trying to get 25 cars in there, which is completely impossible.
Right.
If you have, 30, 40 people coming. And so I will be addressing this with the park boards and that, and try to see if there's anything that can be worked on, if we can get a small bus or whatever the case may be. But it just takes a lot of locations away from us in the summer, and that's extremely frustrating.
So just to walk around, but
to walk around, you got to drive there to walk around. So then you got parking, and that is one of the big challenges, is the limited parking space, and so then they're not so much managing park attendance as they are managing parking.
Absolutely. And I'm definitely not like throwing rocks here, because there is value to this. I mean, people are, there's 4 people in a party and 4 cars. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you guys carpool, and I think most of our people are encouraged to do that, and most of them actually do. And so, but once you have an organized group, it's very difficult to control everybody coming from everywhere, and it isn't necessarily conducive to carpooling. So it can be challenging. So it's just a matter of trying to find some sort of bridge the gap so that we can continue using some of those incredible locations over the summer, because it really takes away from the experience. And yes, we have alternative locations and some pretty crazy locations as well. So it's not like they're all out of play, but a lot of the best ones are, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems that you'll face, at least as my guess, is in order to encourage people to come out on the mental health walk, maybe for their first time or their second time, you want to make it, jazz hands. You want to make it like, wow, that place is amazing. I really want to go there. Even though it's my first time and I'm nervous and etc. I've always wanted to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's tricky. You want to pick the spots that hit, but
Mhm.
that's hitting with everyone. And so, now it's crowded. So it's tricky.
Yeah, I think what people were complaining about last year, say for example at Bunsen Lake here in the Belcara area near Port Moody, was the fact that definitely it was quite evident that people were booking the spots and not using them. And so you couldn't get a spot to save your life. And then yet what people would do is they would walk like a bunch of kilometers off the street to go inside the trail.
Oh, yeah.
And by the time they get there, half the parking lot is empty.
Right.
So it's almost like maybe, and I don't know what that looks like. So I'm not, I generally, when I bring problems, I bring solutions along with them. But if what happens if the person actually isn't there, and is there even a mechanism in place to identify that? And my guess is no, there isn't.
No,
right?
It's all done on faith.
It'd be very labor intensive to try to police that. But at the end of the day, you need to think like if we have after one season of doing this, if we have a 35% no show, we need to almost factor in a 20% no show and additionally book some spots.
Yeah.
Right. So you can increase the amount of spots considering like a 20% no show. So it still gives you a 15% buffer, give or take. And you're good, right? Like it's kind of like how Air Canada runs this business.
Unsuccessfully though.
Oh man, they got
you're just not getting any government bailouts every month like Air Canada is though.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, when you're federally subsidized, I think you can you can relax your ability to schedule things. We do have a couple. Just want to hit this up. Winter Storm, morning. Good to see you.
Morning, boys.
Carl, good to see you as well. Morning, and Patrick, all good jumping in. Good mornings. So we'll any thoughts on? I do have a question on the. You just did number 30, right, for your mental health walk?
Yes, yeah? That was number 30. Yeah, so we've been up for 60 weeks now because it's every 2 weeks, so it's bi-weekly. And so this might change eventually, but it's been really good because it's been really sustainable. And actually people have been looking forward to coming 2 weeks later. And I find that likely, and I can't confirm that until I actually try it, but I find that there's probably more engagement on account of the limited amount of walks that we're doing in the set deadline. Yeah. If you have the option every weekend, I feel like people would be a bit less engaged. So, and
it's
we'll
not
see.
As precious. It's not as valued. It's not as Christmas presenty.
Sure. And for me, I want to be there and provide the community service, but at the same time, I need to juggle the rest of my life, which is very hectic. So it's just a matter of sustainability. Yeah, we can all start things and doing them, at an incredible volume, but can you sustain it? If you cannot, you're eventually going to walk yourself off the whatever endeavor you've taken on. So and there's no say that in a couple of years somebody doesn't take the walk over, and it'd still be a success story as far as the creation of it and having it established, and then having somebody else that has the wits to do it, to take it on, and that'd be fantastic also. But yeah, for now I'm it.
So here's a question for you then. I've been curious about this, is that are you seeing the same crew, like the same core people coming out every couple of weeks and then have kind of peripherals in and outs, or is it a pretty solid crew of people all the time?
Yeah, so I would say the bulk of our people are returning customers, so to speak. Like they're the people that have been with us and come in regularly. They're the core group, and then they will generally bring other people along that likely wouldn't have been there or wouldn't have heard of it, or whatever the case may be. So we always have new people coming in, which is, I think, a critical piece of that, because a lot of people that are intimidated by showing up, or perhaps imagine that the group is so well established that everybody knows each other, and you'll be the person that shows up that nobody knows, or whatever the case may be. And it absolutely isn't the case. Like every walk, there's at least 5 or 6 or 7 people that have never met anyone, have never been there, and within about 3.5 minutes, they understand how futile it was to even be intimidated, because our groups are so welcoming and we're set. The culture is set, right? Like, and this is, I don't care where you go. if you lead in any way, you better make sure that that culture is what it needs to be, so that it's inviting for people to come in. And so we we made sure, and we make sure, and all our people are very welcoming, and even if somebody is very uncomfortable, by the time they show up, generally 2 minutes in, they're like, okay, I can breathe now. And then you start seeing those people being returning customers and bring people along with them and everything. One of the misconception that's still going around is that this is specific to first responders, and it isn't. It absolutely isn't. Yes, we do have a lot of first responders by way of, me and my background, and the people that know me, but we have a ton of non-first responders, and everybody kind of pulling the same direction. We have people of all walks of life, people that think a certain way, other people that think the complete opposite, but ultimately they all have one thing in common. They're wanting to focus on wellness for 2 hours on Sunday at 9 a.m.
That's pretty good. What's Shaun? You had a point there a second ago, or?
No, I was just gonna make an observation on how successful it seems it has been, and then ask you if over the 30 sessions, the delta or the difference between the first time to now, how you didn't expect something to happen, or how something new evolved that you didn't anticipate, or, oh, I didn't expect to learn that. So, I mean, it's a body of work. And so I'm curious as to what your learnings are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's really, it was more, I guess, of a corroboration of something I already kind of knew, which was sometimes the most effective things are the simplest. And we want complicated, because otherwise, why wouldn't we have done it? And it starts exposing, if all I had to do to feel better about my anxiety was to go for a walk in the woods, well, I would have done it, obviously, right? No. And it is that simple. I mean, you absolutely. I mean, I told a story before when I woke up a couple of weeks ago and not having any issues with recurring anxiety, but I was still experiencing anxiety just like anybody else. I woke up one morning and I was feeling very anxious for my baseline, and I told a friend of mine, I was like, you know what, we need to go in nature and we need to take the dogs out. And we went to this waterfall hike and we were there for 4, maybe 6 hours. And I came out of there ready to conquer the world. Like, I was good to go. Like, it is absolutely insane what it does for you. And so, the corroboration of that through people coming in was just a cementing that, yes, this is very effective, despite its simplicity. And also, from the get-go, one of the things that we have done was to provide them with a little actionable piece for the week. And it's kind of a constructivist way, in that we are addressing the piece, and if the piece doesn't apply to you, then you just move on and wait for in the next 2 weeks something will apply to you and that you can action in your own life. And we have seen incredible growth from our members that are coming all the time with respect to, imagine being given a golden nugget every 2 weeks that you can work on then for 2 weeks and apply. And then you come back, and as you already sort of moved forward in your ability to negotiate this journey, you actually get another piece that's really helpful, that helps you in another area. So we have seen some incredible growth. And one of my measures of success, however tacky this might sound, is a bit of how the social media piece is unfolding, but also how the interactions are occurring between our people. And you can hear them speak, and they're just different humans, right? Considering like 60 weeks later compared to where they were with their own journey and their ability to articulate certain things. And it is absolutely undeniable. And if I want to go a step further, we're receiving DMs and text and messages consistently from people saying, like, look, not only has this helped my husband, but also it helped us, the entire family, because he's a different man, when he comes home. And so we can all sit here and wait for the absolute best solution where we can help everybody get out of their dark hole, or we can implement something that has enough potential and enough demonstrated supporting evidence to continue doing it on a regular.
Do you have any examples? Do you think you could hit us up with a couple of like little nuggets that you would pass on to some of the people? That way, and that way we can get a really solid view of what it is you guys are talking about out there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything, and it can be the exact same subject of conversation that we're having here on the collective, right? It can be like focus is a choice. Focus is a choice. It is not an accident, and you don't use a cop out of humans can only focus for this long. Not the case. You can focus for as long as you want to, and don't use that as a. And so if there are certain things that you're writing yourself off on account of, having ADHD or having anxiety or having PTSD or OSI or whatever the case may be, what are some of the things that are destructive to you right now? So it's no different than all the subjects of conversation that we're having here, except we pick a very small piece and we actually just say, look, something to consider. And it's more of a consideration rather than, it's not directive, right? It's a consideration. Like those are some of the things you're going to have to, we can address victim mentality. We can address deflection. We can address physical fitness or physical engagement, or we can address being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and all those things, all the nuts and bolts that are creating those wellness mechanisms in the 4 pillars of resilience, right?
I like that a lot. It's nice. It's enough to just allow people to actually figure out how to put it into their own lives, right? Versus saying you need to do X, Y, or Z. It's just here's a little piece. Figure out how it fits. It's up to you. Enjoy. What do you got? Go ahead. I thought Shaun
hang on a sec. So that is nice, but there is a bit of a difference between what we do over here on the collective and what you're doing on your mental health walk. What we can't do over here is hold people accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But on a mental health walk, it's not like you're taking names and holding people accountable. The group holds itself accountable. So I know how it works. We all know how it works. When you show up in front of someone 2 weeks later, so you've gone out on your first mental health walk, the second mental health walk, it's not there's expectations of you, but you've kind of got to get with the program to some degree. There is kind of an expectation of you. And if you've been on 10 mental health walks, now all of a sudden you're like a sub leader. And then you're 20 mental health walks into it. Now you're like a second in command. And as you evolve through a group dynamic where there's physical connection every 2 weeks, your game elevates itself because the group expects you to be part of the elevation of the group. That's what happens. But that's not what happens here on the collective, because there's no way to hold anyone accountable other than we hope that the knowledge that is passed on is embedding itself and providing good, positive outcomes, which I believe is the case. But we're missing the reinforcing part of the group physicality all being together.
Yeah, it's very powerful indeed. Like you're absolutely right with that, and it's really interesting to see how people are evolving through the relationships that they're creating on the walk, and even how their conversations are evolving as the time goes, and as they're becoming more aware, more capable of dealing with some of the issues in their own journey, even if they don't have any major issues, just little things that optimize their life performance, so to speak. And so it's been really, really interesting. And I think what you are seeing as well is people taking a little bit more accountability. So they'll come in and say if they had a really bad week, or if there has been things that are impacted their lives negatively, you'll see them start kind of venting and then recovering and bringing themselves back and saying, okay, so now this is what I know I need to be doing is, X, Y, and Z. And so you can tell right away that there is a certain self-policing that occurs there as a result of realizing that in the context, I'm bitching to the wrong crowd here. It isn't going to help, right? Whereas what are some of the actions that I want to be taken and in order to help myself and others. And so it's been really good. It's also been really good to have people with various lenses, because I don't want this to be the Seb show. Quite to the contrary. And we have a lot of people that professionally are helping people in the field of mental and emotional wellness, even spiritual wellness in some cases. And we have, great people, just, speakers and people that work in group therapy and, whatever the case may be. And so what I will do is I will generally assign a certain topic to somebody, and I will have them address something that comes out of left field, maybe for me, like something I'm not necessarily either familiar with or inclined to talk about. And it just brings a different piece. So everybody has the ability to connect with somebody different. So if they don't necessarily relate to me and what I'm saying, but they can relate to this person and that other person, that comes from somewhere that's perhaps more relatable to them. Not sure if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. It's actually quite neat because as you guys were saying earlier about the culture and the fact that it's kind of set, is that I could see where people might think that there's a requirement to be accountable to those around, to the group, right? And you have to be accountable to the group, but it doesn't sound like that. It sounds a bit more like that the culture within the group is that you're accountable to yourself and that everybody's accountable to themselves. And therefore, as you go there more and more and more, you just start to realize how accountable you are to your own self and then start taking steps toward it. Does that sound about right? Like kind of where you're sitting?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, me, I always focus on internal factors. Like there's a lot of external factors that you can bring in the picture. The problem with external factors is you have zero control over them. Yeah, you don't. And so if they change, then what? The whole thing changed? No, just focus on you. And if it just so happened that some external factors are either helping or assisting or there to witnesses or whatever the case may be, you've still controlled the parameters that you should have focused on, which is you. Like focus on you, focus on having your own accountability card in your own pocket. So that way you never run out of it and you never have to have anybody else hold you accountable. You learn to do that internally. And the more of those internal mechanisms we can develop, and this is kind of, we were talking about the pursuit of eventually self-rescuing from a really, really bad situation from an emotional and mental standpoint, that be the benchmark. I hold to that very wholeheartedly. The less amount of people you will need eventually, and that's not to say that as you're going there, that you're not utilizing all the resources that you can, but the ultimate goal is self-reliance. How can I self-rescue without any help whatsoever? If I've worked the mechanisms enough that I'm there now, right? And this is always the end goal. Complete internal control, not worried about external factors. Whatever happens, happens. I'll be there reacting the way I know I should,
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. Have you had any like completely out of left field moments where just everything kind of went south and you were able to witness the group either just kind of accept it or, use the tools that you guys have been engaging in? Have you seen any of that directly during the walks?
No, not really. We've and touch wood. I mean, we've had a few hard times. Like there was a lady that was very attached to the group that wanted to come walk with us for the longest time. And I say attached, she was attached virtually. She was following everything. She was reading the post. She was connecting with people that attended the walk all the time, but she was very sick and just couldn't make it out. And she ended up passing away this week. And Pat was her name, and just a great lady. But so we've had a few incidences where people are going through some very serious things, like not things that you can kind of just brush off. And I think that what I have observed is the dynamic of the group is generally helping a lot as far as regulating, some of the emotions associated with some of the harder situations that we've been in. So I think that if I was to look at it from a leadership standpoint, the synergy and the interconnectivity, so to speak, between people has been quite incredible. And I think that anytime that you take people that have been through a lot, that have been through adversity, which is, the bulk of our people. And yes, there are people that are preemptive in their approach, which is absolutely awesome. They're not reactive. That, nothing necessarily happened, but they are just going through life like anybody else, and everybody has their struggle, and they're preemptively addressing their wellness. But yeah, we're really seeing it as almost like a self-sustained entity now. And what I love to see, which I love to see when I was on the team, is that I can actually leave, put somebody else in charge, and the whole thing unfolds as it should, and everybody has a great time, and everybody's done, and so I want to make myself obsolete to the group as early as possible, so they are self-sustained. If something happens to me, this continues. And that's always my plan, whether I'm leading, a tactical unit or something like this, an initiative like this. But as soon as everything relies on one person, it's very sketchy place to be.
Yeah, anytime you are truly indispensable, then what happens when something goes wrong? Because things go wrong, always. There's no doubt about that. Eric's got a good comment here. No man is free who is not master of himself.
Absolutely.
And I think this is really key. Shaun, you're awfully quiet there, standing at ease. You can relax.
I'm just listening. Don't you worry about me. I've given enough drill commands to guys like you that I understand. So just listening to you, Seb, I think the thing that stood out to me is you've built a community that works well together. And if someone's having a struggle, the group supports them. But that doesn't happen on day one. It takes some time. The culture takes some time to develop, and the culture is shaped by the leaders that are guiding the group. But eventually, the leaders have to step out of the way to take a look at how the group acts when the leader's not around, which is precisely what I did this morning in my live IG chat. I was only a few minutes into it, and I said, "Hey, Satch, here's my headphones. Take over." And it was not a spur of the moment thing for me. I think about the things that I do, and I wanted to observe the moment. And so my observation was this, that over a period of time, I've developed a small virtual group community, and they know how to interoperate with me. They know how to interoperate with each other. We've got a pretty cool vibe overall, I would say, but I've never handed the microphone off to someone else and said, "Get after it." And it played out as I expected. The group's culture continued to be the group's culture. Mm-hmm. I'm not required. The construct has already been put in place. I couldn't go so far as to say anyone can do what I do now, but the right people could do it. And it's more than just one now. There's 1,000 people that could step into this mic now and do that with the group that I've created. And so it's a group that you create over a period of time. The culture develops itself as you like to shape it. Then you should be replaceable once it's developed.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And there's a few things that I think are traps over time. So, and what that is you have to ensure that the vision is so clear to everybody that sort of engages in the leading of it, so to speak, or the directing of it, or just make sure that the parameters are well known, because it takes no time to start sliding. If the person that's created it, if their intent gets watered down, it takes no time to see things starting to inject themselves in the culture of a group. And I've had people say to me, I know you think that when you left, nothing changed, but when you left, everything changed, and there's a reason why that was the case, because there are people that will act a certain way on account of not wanting to take you on, and challenge some of the things that you are doing, which you're obviously correct in doing. But once the cat is not around, some of those mice are going to come out and start dancing and doing weird things. And so it's really, really important for me. It's not just like, can this group run but it's like actually be so extremely clear as to what the parameters are to maintain the same culture in the group, whether or not I'm around. That has to be passed on. because that is, essentially the blueprint to success in whatever establishing the culture and maintaining the culture. Because
that's the trick. It's
sure
the
it is.
consistency of discipline.
Sure it is.
Consistency of never letting it slide even a millimeter. And that is not for everyone. As a leader, people get sloppy, people get lazy, people kick it back. And that's where things go sideways. And so you can build a subunit or a unit to meet the needs of the task in front of the unit, the mission, we'll call it. But the moment that you start getting lazy is the moment that you derail. And more importantly, the moment that you leave and a lazy person steps in is the moment it derails. The unit will take care of itself as long as they know that they aren't allowed to backslide. So then it all comes down to discipline.
Agreed. And I think the more people you can get engaged, sorry, Chance,
No,
like the more people you can get engaged in being the gatekeepers of that culture, the better it is. If you have the right people in place and you have the right experience, that alleviates the foreseeable issue that one day one of them is going to move on, the other one's going to move on, and next thing you know, you're 10 years later, and now who's done what and what was the actual intent of this, and you have actually lost everything. And that's possible. And you could still be doing something that, at face value looks really good, but really has minimal impact on account of the intent of it was lost, or the culture to operationalize that intent was lost.
I think this goes to, there was the post from, I think another post from True Dark or from Blue Line that you came out with, that we were talking about the difference between imposed discipline versus self-discipline, right? And if you can have a team that is all self-disciplined up to a certain standard versus having an imposed discipline on the team of the standard, the moment that you step away and you're no longer imposing that standard, it's going to slide. But if everybody is imposing that, or if everybody has their own discipline to maintain the standard, doesn't matter who leaves, that discipline, that standard will be upheld. At least.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of pointing out the result and the symptomology associated with whatever culture you have, right? I think that's one key piece, is that oftentimes, just as in if somebody is in a toxic relationship or in a toxic environment, they sometimes don't realize they're in a toxic environment until they leave the environment and realize, well, sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes you're in a really good environment, you don't realize it until you're gone, right? So for me as a leader, and for the leaders in the group, is to reinforce the principles like, look, see this? Yes, this was because of our culture, right? Otherwise, where else would you see that? And I think our people have done a fantastic job of pointing out how beneficial things have been, passing on, just the respectful nature of the conversations, or whatever the case may be, and they're essentially full on buy-in to this, right? Like, so it's not me convincing anybody of anything. It's like, look at what we have, and look at how it's working for us. And it is, I would say, God, I don't know. It is so gratifying to run that walk. It's really, really hard to explain. So
well, try. What's the number one thing that really strikes you?
The one thing that I really love is people taking actions, right? It doesn't really matter if those actions are perfect. Quite to the contrary. I expect those actions not to be. But also, there is a lot of verbal warfare going on, with respect to what happens in life and how you're reacting to it and those types of things. But very few people are actually taking actions that we know are beneficial to help with whatever situation that they're in. And so you have, as at a time where we live in a world of victims, it's kind of nice to have people take the rein and say, I know this can help me. I'm not sure exactly how, but there is enough people around me and there's enough evidence to support that. So I'm going to come in and give everything I have to the process. And I guarantee you that it's not always every Sunday or every second Sunday that people want to hear me speak. Like, it's I can guarantee you that it's not the case. Sometimes you just want to have a nice walk or whatever, but yet here we are. They're still getting a piece of information. They're still focusing in a part of the process. And so when you see that, and Shaun, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, because if there's anybody who loves somebody engaged in the process of becoming better, and they will get all the help they need if they give you 100%. Well, that's exactly the same.
Truth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's exactly the same for me. When I see them, it motivates me so much to give them more, to research more, to look at the people that are helping and leading the walks and see what they can bring as far as like varying the lens on some of the issues that we've discussed before. How can I reintroduce some discussions, some former discussions, and see if things have evolved, or perhaps things have evolved on my end, that kind of stuff. So it's just it's very gratifying to know that, yeah, everybody's talking a big game and deflecting on who's doing what for who, but we're doing it. Like, we are doing the walk every 2 weeks. You want to join us? And it's what's also interesting is standing on the outside and standing on the sideline and looking at people that are consistent complainer of their own situation, and sometimes with reason. I'm not downplaying whatever it is that they're going through.
Yeah, sure.
But the thing is how many times, and then I will get a text from them every second Sunday saying, oh, I got called in for work. Oh, whatever the case may be. And so it's been 60 weeks now and they've never made one. But I can tell you this, every 30 walks I've done, I've received a text from them with an actual justification as to why they're not there. Right. And so having, and so what I'm seeing is, obviously they feel the need to, and this is for them, it has nothing to do with us, but because taking actions is actually sort of bringing shining a spotlight on the fact that they are not, then they need to associate a certain reason why they're not doing it, because otherwise, what is your actual reason? And so for me, when they come to me after and they're like, I really would love to talk to you about this or that, the other thing, I'm like, dude, for 30 mental health walk, we address all of those things. You always had a good reason not to come or whatever. So it actually brings full circle that accountability back again. And I just love to take a mirror and put it in front of someone, and as I like to take it and look myself in it. A lot of people are not doing that. But once you put a mirror in front of someone and you go, those are all the things that you're responsible for that you have not done. Okay. So now you're looking around as to who's to blame for what's going on in your life, what's interfering with you, with the smooth operation of your journey or your daily operations. And really, the one thing that you haven't done is the work internally, right? To be where you need to be. So,
well, everyone loves thought.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loves a sexy thought. Everyone likes to think they're part of a sexy team.
Mm-hmm.
Where it all falls apart is the first drop of sweat, the first inch of conviction, the first 30 seconds of, oh, this is going to sting. That's a disconnect. And I don't know how to move some people out of that. They think they're kicking ass, or they think they're working on themselves, or they think they're paying attention. I feel that there's almost two clubs. There's the club that likes to think they're in the game through thought. And then there's the club that understands you have to move to the other club that is called thought and then acted on it. And there's not enough people in that second club, but there's a whole pile of people who are thinking up thoughts right now that are novel thoughts about how much better they're going to be in the future. And it never lines up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how people are so disconnected from the simple bridge of, well, just step off, step in, make an effort.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like that anticipatory reward system,
It is.
based system, where they're actually, what they're doing is they're looking at a desirable outcome, and they get essentially a pleasure hormone release from that, as in every time they consider whatever the outcome is going to be. Where the grind starts, and where getting to what it is that you want is one step at a time every day. It loses its luster, and it's it's appeal very quickly, and you realize that this is a difficult process. But just think of it this way in relation to bring it back to the mental health walk. The people that have showed up, say 20 out of 30 of those mental health walk, they received an incredible amount of extremely valuable information. And I tell you what, I've had people say to me, like, look, I've been in therapy for freaking 7 years and I've never even heard this. And now I did, and it's changed my life. So it's not just talking to hear ourselves talk. Those are things that we've had, and especially in my case, where, and Shaun, obviously you're the same way. I was able to see what it looks like when high performers are coming together. What are they doing? What are the consistent trend? What are the mindsets? How do you achieve certain things? And we can talk theoretical all day, but there was a Fight Masters many years ago where some of the best scientists in the country were assembled in a room, and they had a soft operator in there, and they basically described what would happen to him when they put him in ice water. And now with Wim Hof and everything being very popular, now it's no novelty anymore.
Yeah,
but
I watched that, how he was, as I've done myself, controlled my own body temperature by moving blood flow to my extremities.
He was literally reversing the process.
I watched it. Yeah.
And so doctors are sitting there baffled because theoretically that cannot happen, and in the academic world, so to speak.
Yeah, maybe
so,
for them, but yet
sure,
here we are doing it.
100%. So I think it's important to embrace the fact that there is less empirical evidence, which is no less supported, so to speak, but also that you have the other piece, which is the research piece. So we're acting on that premise, we're acting on that basis, but we are marrying it up with an operational experience of what does it look like when you're surrounded by high performers. Mm-hmm. What did they think like? And I mean, I can go on all day, man. Many years ago in 2013, I was coaching a team at the CrossFit Regional Games. And one of my athletes, who's a former military, former PPCLI guy with a couple combat tours, great guy, said to me something that I never forgot. What happened was, by way of his qualifiers, he was sort of in the third heat, or sort of the weakest heat, so to speak. And then by way of performance, he actually found himself in the second heat. And then by way of performance, once again, he found himself in the top tier. And he said that the difference in conversation mindset between the top tier and the second tier, and then the second tier and the third tier, were like day and night.
They're like alien species to each other.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about the second tier as being like, this is, as soon as the event would be announced, they'd be like, okay, well, this isn't really my event. I'm not really a handstand push-up guy. I'm not really a strong lifter. I'm not really whatever. And so they would start building the wall of excuses that would justify whatever piss poor performance they were going to deliver, or what they would assume would be a piss poor performance. And so they're on the field doing the thing, and they're the men in the arena, and evidently they should be respected for that, because that counts as a secondary achievement. But the top tier group was like, I got this is good to go. I've trained for everything I could. It's just, the mindset was blowingly different. Yeah, precisely, ready for war, with your shield or on it. And so, yeah, anyways, that's we can't understate the importance of that, of having the ability to marry up the theoretical knowledge of wellness with the operational side of the people that are actually out there optimizing their life journey.
Yeah, so with Satch being here, he just headed out for, we'll loosely call it a run. He ain't going to be running on our terrain. He's going to be hobbling up and shuffling quickly. Anyway, that would be fun. So
shuffling faster than me, that's for sure.
Well, by the end of the shuffle, he'll be shuffling slower than most. So one of the things that is interesting to me with Satch being here right now is we were kind of talking about this a little bit last night, and it was loosely around the subject of how when he was first getting into the game of, I think I'm going to be doing some running, how in his mind he'd already run across Canada. And it's that, you can have faith in yourself, or you can have belief in yourself, or you can have conviction on the mission or what have you, but it's not done yet.
No.
You haven't done it yet. And so a lot of people can kind of get it all up in their heads that they'll come up with a plan, and the thought is the action, and the thought's already done. Actually, they're already a world champion.
Mm-hmm.
What do I move on to next? What's my next thought? I think I want to be a world macrame champion. Okay, I've already done that because I just thought it. So what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And so thought, action. And so once he started including action in his thoughts, and then started to realize like, oh, wow, this is actually going to take a lot of action, then you can start to get a little discouraged, because you start synchronizing up the big dreamy goal requires a bucket full of sweat every day. And if you're not comfortable with sweating, then find other dreams.
Yeah.
Don't
man.
big if you don't like sweat. But we all should be dreaming big, and that's disconnect. You can't dream big and think it's already done.
Yeah. There's a great comment from Julie here about this. That says, I could not agree more. People think they're doing what it takes, but they're not checking all the boxes. They're only ticking the ones they want to. And I think it goes even further than this, in that it's not even that they're ticking the ones that they want to. They draw the box and go, sweet,
done,
right? Good to go. We got a couple comments here, and then a question for you, Seb. I just want to hit before we run out of time here. Tanya says, my nascent theory, complaining is relinquishing agency and choosing inaction. How to discern this from processing pain via verbalizing. Example of the coined tend and befriend behavior by Dr. Sapolsky. I don't actually know that where that comes from, but
Robert Sapolsky, I believe.
There you go. From processing pain. Yeah, I mean, those two are not mutually exclusive. I mean, you can, and it's important to acknowledge whatever it is that's occurring in your life. Like, you can't just pretend that everything is just peachy, because that's not going to work. And this is actually toxic positivity, and it is a thing.
Yeah. First thing I thought was like, it's every infantryman's right to complain. In fact, I don't even like you if you don't have a little bit of complaining in you. But it's an artful practice. It's a tactful practice. It's not complaining to complain. There's an art to it, of course.
I agree. And it's really one thing to complain and to get the job done anyways, knowing what needs to be done, and going down the drain of cynicism, which create the shortcomings that we all see on account of the things that you are cynical about, or even worse, you become nihilistic. And now you're actually not even wanting to be a part of the solution because there's no hope. And so it's a very slippery slope, and it's very, very quick to get there in between. And you may not realize that you've transitioned to the next phase of this operation, which is being just so negative that you're sucking everybody down with you. And so something that's very common in policing, actually very common, And
you've said this before, and I said when you said it last time, I kind of feel like I slipped into that myself to some degree at one point. And it's not that I got like super negative externally. I was looking around me thinking like, what is even going on? Like, I mean, does anyone even care? Is anyone even going to make an effort? And so that's kind of what started dragging me down, was I just saw people not trying. And I don't know, I got cynical for sure. Nihilistic, maybe, who knows? But I don't feel I did, but maybe. I will say this, so it's easy to backslide when you're surrounded by mediocrity that you can't organize and categorize. And that's where I was struggling. I was observing, I was assessing, and then I was categorizing it as such. What's the point, man? And so I kind of had to turn it around. And well, the point is, I'm going to kick some awesomeness into some people. Maybe that's how I pulled myself out of my cynicism. But I don't think I think it's there all the time, lurking in the shadows if you don't have a counter program to run against it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. For me, and we've spoken about this lots before. I mean, I am a master of policing what my head does. Like I'm no good at anything, but I'm very good at that. Like if my head says something, I'll immediately call it out and say, no, that's not what's happening. This is what's happening, And so it's not that the absence of those thoughts it's not that those thoughts aren't going through my mind, is what action am I taking as soon as they enter? The gates gets closed, shut right in their face quickly, right? And I think that's the biggest misconception when it comes to anything that can interfere with your life journey, is to think that somehow it's easier for somebody else to negotiate the same things that you are going through, when really at the end of the day, that person has to fight also to do that and to make that happen every day. Sure. Every day, every thoughts. It's easy for me to sit here and all of a sudden I'll have negative thoughts enter my mind and my heart rate accelerates and I start thinking that I'm a freaking useless and that I'll amount to nothing over the next couple of years, that my retirement will prove to be disastrous, that all those things. I can go down a rabbit hole real quick.
Yeah.
But it's immediately stopped, right?
It's a challenging thing, because I know I hit that realm of cynicism and went deep into the nihilism to the point that I was just like, I'm done and stepping away from it all.
And you were done for a long time.
For quite a while, yeah. And it wasn't until, getting called out a couple of times by people going like, what are you even doing? And then you're like, what am I doing? And you start to analyze it, right? But that's part of it. That's it took doing exactly what you're doing, was putting the mirror up in front of my face and going, oh, right. And sometimes it was somebody else that, Shaun and I were talking about this yesterday, it was that my psych would do that regularly. She would just put the mirror in front of me and be like, what have you done about it? Nothing. Okay, come back next week and we'll talk about that. Right. And then so that you can fall into that nihilistic trap super easy. You go down that rabbit hole. But it does take I had this image earlier of you, Seb, I sent you a message on one of your pictures from your stories where you were bareback and you're holding the reins and you had your hands up like this. And I get that you were trying to stop, but it looked like you were Ricky Bobby and you were like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, when you have somebody that is new to riding, they'll do one of two things. They'll either bring their hands up here with the reins, or they let go because they don't know what to do. And it's kind of goes along with what we're talking about here, is that is it's almost a natural reaction, right? You want to be able to see what you're doing right in front of your face, or I don't want to touch it, right? Like I don't even know what to do. I'm going to make it worse. I'm just going to stop. But what actually is required when you're riding a horse, especially when a new rider, is the maintenance of those reins and the maintenance of your hands low and the relaxation that you have to have in order to sit properly in that saddle and be smooth versus tense and rigid and all those bad things. But it's a tough one. Tanya says, kvetching is an art form most don't understand. That is 100% true. Well done on the Yiddish. I like it. Kvetching is a Yiddish term.
You can't leave it to Tanya.
Yeah, that's great. Winterstorm says, dream big, do more than that.
Yep, agreed.
So I think, good to have big thoughts, then put in more work to do it. So we have one more question from Eric here, and I wanted to hit you up with this before we shut her down. Eric says, if there's time to ask, Seb, how do you talk about death with your group? In the case of the woman, Pat, you mentioned, for example. So I think that's probably, a struggle with a lot of people, is dealing with not only their own mortality, but others as well.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. The very first time that I spoke about death during a mental health walk had to do with dogs. And it was a conversation with somebody that had said something to the effect of, I've lost my, best friend, my dog, and I'll never have another one again. And obviously I couldn't let that go. I couldn't
Could you
I
let
just
that slide?
you can't, right? Because it's like, oh really? So what else are you not going to do on account of potentially losing someone you might get attached to? Are you going to bubble wrap yourself and go hide in the countryside and make sure to never build a relationship ever on account of we all have a limited time here? What are we even trying to control here? This isn't working. It's the same with our kids. And it's very unfortunate, but we give them the tools, we give them as much as we can, but at the end of the day they have their predicated path in this life journey, and things are going to happen, and there's things that you're not going to be there to be able to prevent, and trying to prevent everything bad from happening to them is going to create additional issues. And so at the end of the day, we're not controlling who stays and who leaves and who's there and who isn't the next day. We're not. So I'm not worried about trying to control that. What I am controlling is my response to this. And as long as we are honest with ourselves with respect to our longevity, with respect to the amount of time that we're on this planet, with respect to the fact that life is finite and that death isn't the end of life, it's part of it. Like, stop making it sound like somehow every time it happens, it's a shocking surprise. Right? Because it's not. Like, it's absolutely not shocking. Right? And I think for me, this was exemplified over the course of a 20-year career where I buried, 32 or 33, cops, like to murder. I mean, not to anything else, and again, we've all lost obviously friends in operational theaters, but it's the same, when my mom passed away, for example, and this was another case of, look, your life is falling apart now, in talking to my sister, for example, or my aunt, and just having that reiteration that, look, what would that person want you to do right now? Like, if that person was given one chance to tell you what their expectations of you are, what do you think those expectations will be? And if you know them well enough, you know exactly what they would say. I don't need Shaun Taylor to be here to know what he's going to tell me if I tell him something. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was all about, you can't live life like this. Stop trying to control everything. You have zero control, but you have control over how much time and the use of the time that you have with the things that you love, or the people that you love. And that is where your focus needs to be, not when their own journey is coming to an end. That has nothing to do with you at all. And so make that life and make that connection as strong as it possibly can be until that connection is no longer. What else is there? Anyway, so it was the first time I really addressed death, was in relation to and then of course with Pat, I'm not sugarcoating things. I truly believe that humans are doing themselves a disservice by putting their head in the sand when it comes to death. You have to domesticate it. You have to make it a part of your regular mindset. It reminds you to do the things that you need to be doing in the very limited amount of time that you have. It's kind of like a deadline. Give anybody schoolworks and give them no deadline, and tell me how, productive they will be. And so thinking about death daily, memento mori, so to speak, for me is a constant reminder to do more with less time,
Yeah. I love that. Tanya commented on this as you were talking, is pain is the price of admission for having loved or for growth.
Agreed.
I think that's 100% accurate. There's in the Jewish tradition, there's a line when somebody passes away, and I think it's fantastic, is let their memory be a blessing. And it's because it's not about them physically, right? Because they're gone. Okay, cool. But enjoy the memory. Enjoy the times that you had with them. Enjoy that the depth of that relationship that you had, and keep that as a blessing rather than letting it sink in as a negative, consistent thing throughout your life. Shaun, you got a thought? I can see your hand on
I was just chewing over that. I think that's a great statement. I don't think I've ever heard it stated as part of a religion. I didn't know it was a said thing, but it's cool. I dig it. What it did make me think of, though, was something completely different, though it does relate. And that is, I may not die physically today, but I could die virtually today if I shut this whole program down, me being part of podcasting or whatever. And so then that begs the question of the impact that we have in our physical lives versus the impact that we have in our virtual lives. And I think that probably our virtual lives, to some degree, as we move forward in the future, will have a bigger impact than our physical lives. So, the amount of people that'll stand at my grave site and say, "Hey, it was all right," will be less than the amount of people virtually who will virtually eyeball my grave site and say, "Yeah, it was all right." And I think the virtual life will continue on longer than the physical life, certainly in a digital space, that's for sure.
Oh yeah,
Totally
you can
agree.
rest assured of that.
So we are just about time here. Fantastic conversation. Thank you very much. Both of you guys been very poignant, I think. Seb, any final thoughts on anything we've gone over today on the walks, on any of the points that we've hit so far?
Sure. Yeah, just one thing. So I've had several people approach me over the years and ask like, "Hey, can we affiliate our walk to your walk and, run one locally in the interior or wherever else?" And so I am 100% for that. Like the goal isn't for me to be, and you don't have to ask me for permission, but if you would like to affiliate with us and call your walk the mental health walk, 2023 or a 2022 and create a group that runs out of Kelowna, what I am prepared to do is to give you all the assistance that you need, which means having the conversations about what my discussion point is for the week. And so we can jump on Zoom, have that conversation. And if that, triggers something in you, or if it gives you something that you are capable of communicating, then we can just say, let's have our bi-weekly meeting and really discuss what we're going to discuss at the next walk and make it consistent sort of across the board, even though there will be differences, which we want that. And we want it to be a little bit different. But if you are interested in that, I'm all in. Let's do it. But you have to attack it with some consistency. We don't want something that starts and fizzle off.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good idea. I hadn't really thought about the consistency of sort of not a programmed topic every 2 weeks, but certainly some consistent topic every 2 weeks. Because man, you could get some wild child who starts up a program in the middle of Manitoba or whatever the case is, and now he or she is saying all kinds of wacky-do subjects.
100%.
So yeah, that's wise, man. I like that.
Shaun, any final thoughts before we shut her down?
No, not at all. It was a good conversation. Covered a lot of good ground, and hopefully this encourages people to sit down after this potty and think a little more deeply, and maybe even give feedback. I suppose is how I'm going to sum up is I'd love to get some feedback moving forward on these various podcasts and on the subjects that we're covering, whether we're going too deep, not deep enough, whether it would have been better to tangentially move into another area, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to shape this thing, but we appreciate everyone helping us shape it together as a group.
Absolutely. If there are topics that y'all want to hear, shoot them to me. I will put them in my list and we will make sure to cover them. If we're going too deep into, say, jiu-jitsu and you guys are like, "Oh man, you guys are talking about jiu-jitsu again. Let's not do that." Let us know. So shoot me a message on Instagram, either on the collective or on my personal one, or shoot us an email. It's in the comment list or in the comment bar there. So hit us up. Let us know what's going on. That way, not only can you learn, build, and grow, but we can learn, build, and grow, and we could do it together every day here on the collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.